I'm Pastor Mark of the Eternals Congregation. In 305 before the Common Era, Greek becomes the official language of Egypt under Ptolemy I. The later historian quoted by Manetho is Agathodemon, that means noble spirit, which managed the work of his father after the coronation of Ptolemy II. Since the historical epochs that separate one character from the other are enormous, it seems more correct to speak of ancestor-heir rather than father-son. Subsequently, Manetho accesses the work of Agathodemon and wrote the Egyptiaca, probably under Ptolemy III. By relying on these writings, we do not have specific dates to refer to. What is certain is that the pyramids are not to be traced back to millions of years ago. On the other hand, they cannot have been built by Homo erectus, which had a cranial box, potentially intelligence, that was 25% smaller than that of the sapiens. If anything, it is interesting the hypothesis of a constructive participation by Neanderthals, potentially more intelligent than the sapiens, thanks to the greater size of the skull. What emerged from these texts is that the pyramids of Giza were built in an historical epoch during which cuneiform writing was used and the hieroglyphic moved its first steps. The Egyptian Greek historian Manetho, lived during the 3rd century before the Common Era, tracks a brief chronology of the scholars who would have taken note of the history of Egypt. Hermes, meaning the one who put together a pile of stones, invents a form of writing that precedes the use of the hieroglyph. He reforms the calendar, bringing the year from 360 days, what we can call Sumerian system, to 365 days, establishing the Egyptian calendar divided into 3 seasons of 4 months each, 30 days a month, for a total of 360 days, to which 5 or 6 epigomenic additional days were added. Hermes Trismegistus, the Trismegistus, the thrice great, or even holy, holy, holy Hermes, translates the writing of his father in hieroglyphics. Given the work of translation, it is to be considered that the previous documents had been drafted in cuneiform characters, and that they came from the Sumerian tradition. Enoch or Enosh is the prophet Idris, whose name means the interpreter, and this suggests that it is the same as Hermes Trismegistus. Born in Babylon in the city of Ur, he left his hometown accompanied by other Muslims because the social fabric was at the time irreparably corrupt and compromised, and continued to be so despite his preaching. His father was Yared, similar to the Semitic Jared, and his mother was Barkanah. His wife's name was Adana, in Hebrew is Edna, daughter of Daniel. The son was Methuselah, father, or it's better to say grandfather, of the prophet Noah. Said Ahmed Amiruddin pointed out that Hermes Trismegistus was the builder of the pyramids of Giza, as a tomb for Seth, and maybe for Prophet Idris Enoch himself, and takes a leading role in the Islamic tradition. The hadiths specify that the angel of death took care of Idris at the same time as he ascended into heaven, out of his body. Like other Buddhist saints, he may have definitely moved away from his body in the course of meditation or, in a much more practical manner, has quietly died out during sleep. The religious office carried out on top of natural mountains, on volcanoes, and in the absence of natural reliefs, on separate pyramids, should be traced back to the Zoroastrian worship of fire. The top of the Mesopotamian ziggurat housed a temple, or at least a shrine, where the priests made the attar, sacred fire, to burn, which symbolized both the solar fire and that contained in the bowels of the earth. The truncated vertex of the pyramids, therefore, symbolically became the mouth of an erupting volcano. The specimen of the Egyptian pyramids, a keep with the pointed apex, is a special and less widespread case. On the Giza Plateau, for example, the ceremonial temples are located at the base of the pyramids, while the summit is or was characterized by the Banban, an element in gold or covered with gold, where the sun itself lit, reflecting the sacred fire. The term pyramid can indeed derive from the Greek pyros, fire, and the Assyrian Amadia, mountain, flaming mountain. One could therefore consider the Egyptian pyramids as the first automatic altars. Let's now turn our gaze far away to Central America. The American continent was populated by Asians, passed through the Bering Strait, during the last glacial period, that of Worm occurring during the years 110,000 and 9650 before the Common Era. This is a questionable matter, since we do not understand why a population would have decided to abandon its land to face a journey through the barren northern frozen lands during the Ice Age. However, culture remains in the nomadic stage, with a limited knowledge up to the mysterious and sudden appearance of Olmecs, whose civilization manifests itself precisely around 1400 before the Common Era. The statues of these people represent individuals with Semitic features halfway between Asian and African, completely unrelated to pre-existing Indian populations. The dawn of the Olmecs also accompanies the appearance of theocracy in Central America. However, the culture is refined only around 750 before the Common Era, when the Maya people gathered the knowledge of Contiki-Viracocha and found its first major cities. The god of creation was tall and had white skin, blonde or white hair, and blue eyes. Risen or came from the Atlantic Ocean, he or they subsequently sailed across the Pacific Ocean. In Mesoamerica we find pyramids of the stepped type, on top of which the same practices already carried out in Mesopotamia took place. Under the pyramid, sometimes used as a burial place for kings, there was, in analogy to the Old World, some underground water source. It is therefore evident that the Mesoamerican culture must have originated from a branch of the Mesopotamian area. The Egyptian pyramids are megalithic constructions. The megaliths present in North America recall the style of Northern Europe Mesoamerican pyramids, therefore being much more similar to ziggurats, also in architectural terms. Megalithic dolmen-type constructions are peculiar of the Mesolithic period. Since the mastering of fire was one of the first conquests of man during the Paleolithic period, it is to be assumed that the religious call toward it was the first to settle in organized societies. It should also be mentioned, in the field of lithology, the case of the menhirs, which over the millennia have remained in use from the Mesolithic to a more or less modern era, refining itself in the form of the obelisks. If you want to know more, subscribe to the Eternals Congregation channel and stay tuned for news. If you want to investigate the matter further, buy the book Dawn of the Gods, The Untold Timeline of Genesis on Amazon and in bookstores. Read it and discuss of it in your congregation or church. Thank you for listening.